Hello, this is Mr. Miller, and let's do a little math. In this video, we'll be talking about compound inequalities. Compound inequalities are just inequalities that are built from two or more simpler inequalities. Like this, in this diagram here, we have x is less than 3. That's represented by the arrow on the left. We have x is greater than 5. That's represented by the arrow on the right. And we're simply putting these together in one graph. It's a compound inequality made from two simple inequalities. Okay, well, let's get started with a few examples. So on here, our mission is to graph this compound inequality and then show how to write it in interval notation. Okay, this won't be hard at all. So this says x is less than or equal to 5 or x is greater than 9. The word or means we want to graph any value of x that belongs to the left inequality or the right inequality or both. Turns out no values of x belong to both. So we're going to graph the first inequality. X is less than or equal to 5. So we know we put a solid dot at 5. And we're going to draw an arrow to the left. That represents this inequality. So all numbers that are less than or equal to 5 are represented there. Or we want numbers that are greater than 9. Well, I'm going to draw a hollow dot and an arrow to the right. So if I said describe the values of x in our graph, I'd say, well, we got values that are either less than or equal to 5 or greater than 9. All right, this is the idea of union, by the way. We'll talk about that word in just a second. Union is when you put two sets or groups together. We're putting these two inequalities together into one graph. All right, well, in interval notation, we represent x less than or equal to 5 like this, with an open parentheses, negative infinity, 5 with a square bracket. So that's how we learn to do that. And we represent the second inequality with x greater than 9 with a curved parenthesis, a 9, and a positive infinity. That's because the first inequality, you kind of think of, comes from negative infinity and goes up to 5. That's what this interval notation means. The second inequality starts at 9 and goes up to infinity. Now, our set includes both of these, so what I'm going to do is put a union symbol. It's like a big U. A union symbol in between them. That's how we represent x is less than or equal to 5 or x is greater than 9 in interval notation. So notice in inequalities, we use the word or, and when we use interval notation, we use the union symbol. Union and or kind of go together. All right, here we go. This one says x is less than 2. So I'm going to put a hollow dot at 2 and an arrow to the left. Or x is greater than 6. We have values that are either less than 2 or greater than 6. And it would be all of these numbers. So when we write this as interval notation, this first interval will go from negative infinity. That's kind of a bad negative infinity, but I think you get it, up to 2. Union, so we're putting that together with this interval, 6 to infinity. That's really the new step. Sometimes our graphs have pieces. How we put them together, how we express any value of x that belongs to either of them, we use the union symbol. Okay, well, this is our last slide, but it contains a lot of things to do. We're going to complete this table. So in this first row, we're given interval notation, negative infinity up to and including 1. So I'm going to put a solid dot at 1, and I'm going to draw an arrow to the left because this comes from negative infinity and goes up to 1. The other one starts at 7, so I'm going to put a hollow dot there. This is curved parentheses, and goes to infinity. Okay, well, if I'm going to write this as an inequality, the first piece would be x is less than or equal to 1, or I can also have values that belong to the second piece. X is greater than 7. So it's not too bad. It's just details, getting all the details straight. All right, this interval goes from minus infinity to -3 and includes -3, so I'm going to put a solid dot there. And the interval comes from -infinity, so it goes all the way to the left. Union, the interval that starts at 2 and goes to infinity, like this. Okay, in inequality notation, this would be x is less than or equal to -3, or x is greater than or equal to 2. So this is kind of easy. We know how to write inequalities for simple graphs that just have one arrow. We're just writing two inequalities for each arrow, and we're joining them with the word or in union interval notation with a union symbol. Okay, well, this one goes from minus infinity to 8. So how about that at 8, because there's a curved parenthesis, and it goes all the way down to -infinity. The other interval starts at 15 and goes to positive infinity. Okay, we just got to write the inequalities for each of these. So x is less than 8, that's the first piece, or x is greater than 15. Okay, this time I have the graph. That's okay. Inequality for this first piece is x is less than 3, or the inequality for the second piece, x is greater than 5. And so we would write this as minus infinity up to 3 union 5 to positive infinity. That's how we write interval notation. Okay, we have x is less than or equal to 6, or x is greater than or equal to 12. So solid dot at 6 and to the left, solid dot at 12 and to the right. Let's write the inequality notation. So it'd be minus infinity up to 6 in a square bracket, union, so combined with 12 to infinity, like that. Okay, that's compound inequalities, and hopefully you're okay with what or and union mean. All right, see you next time.